Hi everyone, welcome to the making of Alice and the Rabbit. For her face I did choose a sort of olive skin tone edging on the darker side, so that's the colour I chose for her. I wanted something with a nice contented smile. I chose to give her closed eyes because I do find sometimes you do need the eyes to be open with a smile. But obviously when you smile it sort of scrunches your eyes up as well, and sometimes that's fine, but you do lose a lot of the colour and light in the eyes when you do that, and sometimes that does work for what you're working with, but for this one it did mean I did like the idea of having her eyes closed rather. I would like it to look contented, if that makes sense. As always, I sculpt my faces first without the teeth. I use reference the whole way through whenever sculpting a new face. I'm not good enough to work from my own imagination for sure. I definitely need reference in front of me. When I sculpt a smile, I do try to sculpt the whole face without the teeth, so that can be quite challenging in that you have to be able to imagine that the teeth are there so that you leave space enough for them afterwards. And of course the minute you add the teeth, the whole face changes. And the weirdest thing as well is depending on the kind of teeth you add, it also changes the face. So it's actually quite exciting though. I remember when I used to paint, I used to leave putting that sort of sparkle of light in the eyes till the very last moment. It was like just what brought the whole thing to life, and it's a little bit like that with the teeth. It's only when you add the teeth that the face suddenly kind of gets a character, which of course changes again when you add hair, so you get a lot of those little adding of sparkle moments when sculpting. As always, I paint the whole face before I add the teeth as well, because that's just my personal choice to do. It doesn't really affect the way the smile looks or the technical side of things. It doesn't really affect that, apart from I just find I am a messy painter. I find it impossible to keep the teeth perfectly white when I'm painting around them, and so I just choose to add them afterwards. But it does mean the whole way through you have to imagine those teeth are there while you do everything else. So for this video I did a lot more filming of shoes than I did of sort of things I have done before. Like I didn't put any of the sculpting of the hands because, you know, hands are in a lot of videos and will be in the future. It's just for this one I thought to film more of sort of things like sculpting the shoes. For shoes at the moment I always sculpt them off the figure, so I do it at the very beginning, you know, after I've sculpted perhaps the hands, while the leg is still just a wire. And for shoes that works well because you can move the shoe around and get all the little details done quite well that way. I can't imagine how it would be if you had a huge figure that you were sort of trying to move around to get in all the areas to put details on the shoes. I think it might be quite difficult, especially if it was also, you know, in a sort of complicated pose where the feet were crossed over or, you know, something like that. So I always do the shoes near the beginning before I have sculpted the legs. With feet I have started, I used to do it that way with feet as well, you know, naked feet, but lately I've been experimenting with sculpting the feet at the very end when you've already got a sculpted leg, because I just think that it helps to have a leg as sort of a reference in order to sculpt the feet. Good anatomy on the feet is what I'm trying to say. So far that's working well. I've only done it for a few figures though, so it's still something new that I'm trying. Anyway, back to the shoes for this one. I wanted it to look very much like those sort of Lolita kind of Harajuku girls, so I sort of found some shoes that were kind of similar to those, and the same with her outfit as well. For the rabbit, I'll just say how much I loved working so large. Oh, it is wonderful. Making eyes that were so big was just so great, and I really want to try doing a bust or something of a human figure face in that kind of size with that size eyes. I think it might be really fun to do, and if I do it I will definitely document it. So for the rabbit I used a Sculpey Ultralight, which seems to be sort of a paper clay with a polymer, maybe polymer base or something in it, because it bakes in the oven just the same as you would bake FIMO or a CERNIT or any other clay, same temperatures, but it has a feel, when it's raw it's got a feel of paper clay. It's very, very soft. That's why I used a lot of my rubber tools and brushes to sculpt with rather than the metal tools that I would usually use, because even the slightest pressure will sort of press it in very easily. It was very soft, and at the same time it's quite spongy, so to get details onto it was quite difficult, you know, with drawing the fur lines, all the fur lines. That was quite a challenge because it has a sort of a spongy surface. It's a very strange clay, but it's great. It keeps the whole piece very light, because when I did the last Harajuku Alice with the teacup, I used just old polymer clay, and luckily the whole piece was quite a bit smaller, so it didn't get as heavy as potentially it could have done if it was the size of this rabbit, but already it had become quite heavy. Even though the inside core was still foil, there was quite a layer of polymer clay on the outside, and it just very quickly added a lot of weight to the base. So for this one I was very conscious of that the whole way through. I wanted to keep it as light as possible. You know, the inside is foil with a wire. He has wires running through his arms and legs and up to the head, but it was then wrapped around with foil to sort of bulk it out. I then put a layer of paper clay, but it was very old paper clay, so that's why it looks so lumpy. I had to rehydrate it really, because a lot of it had gone quite dry, but I just thought it would work really well as an under armature, and it did. It dried within a day. It dried, and it dried very hard, very solid, so that was good. And then over the top of that I built the rabbit from the Ultralight, and the whole thing stayed really light. So I would definitely recommend that if you want to do something big, to use the Ultralight if you can. Obviously it only comes in white, so you do have to paint things, but luckily because he was a white rabbit that was not a problem for this one. Because it's sort of a paper clay-ish type of clay, even though it is baked like polymer, it has that sort of, it's not got as much of a plastic look to it. It's got a more matte kind of paperish, if that makes sense, surface to it. I think painting it would actually not be a problem at all. I think you could get quite a nice effect from painting it, so the fact that it's white I don't think is too much of a problem. Apart from that, the actual sculpting of Alice, that was a challenge this time, well, more of a headache actually. It was just that I really wanted to create, in my mind I had an idea of a figure or Alice hugging the rabbit really tightly so that she kind of squished him. But what I realized, which I'm sure everyone else would have realized beforehand, but I had to take experience to realize, you can't get a figure to do that if you want it to also be able to separate, the two separate. So in my mind I had this idea of what I wanted, and so I sculpted Alice, even though it was alright. Of course sometimes you do silly things, and I thought to myself, oh, let me just see if I can really sort of adjust her pose so that she can be hugging him even tighter. And I squished it too much. And so I had to then, I was like in a dilemma. Do I just try and rectify what I've messed up, or do I start again? And I chose just to start again. So I took a whole weekend, and normally my husband and I go to the gym and do other things, and I just said to him, I don't know if anyone else gets like that, but when you've got something that's annoying you, I said to him, I can't do anything, I've just got to get this done, I've got to fix it, otherwise I'm going to be just frustrated all weekend. So I spent the weekend re-sculpting her. I literally pulled all the clay off, got back down to the armature and re-sculpted her. And the unfortunate part sometimes, although most of the time it's very fortunate or very convenient, this time it kind of wasn't, because I had pictures. I hadn't filmed. When I'm in that mood of frustration, I find that I can't think of anything else. I can't do anything else. And so filming, I didn't film the re-sculpt. I filmed the footage on here is of the original. I'm sure it's very small, the difference, and maybe most people wouldn't even notice, but because it's your own work, you notice things. And when I look back, I think, oh, the original pose was slightly better than the second one. It's just frustrating. I don't know if anyone else has ever found that. And again, it's probably not something that most people would notice, but because I did it and I lived it, I know. And it's annoying. But anyway, what I would like to do, I learned something. I learned that obviously if you're going to do something that's a kind of tight hug like that, you would definitely need them to be able to stay together. They can't be separated. And so I really want to try again. So I wouldn't, obviously not with the rabbit, but with something else, I definitely want to try doing that again. But they would have to be built as one piece and not be able to be separated, which would have caused this to be very big and probably a bit clumsy, so I'm not sure, but I definitely want to try it again. So that's about her pose. And I think the only other thing to really say about her is that I first of all tried to give her black hair, but I wasn't happy with it. I think that the Harajuku Alice I want to keep to be sort of cartoonish, sort of a little bit that anime look, which is very unreal and sort of fantasy. So I took the black hair off and I gave her pink hair in the end, and I actually am much happier with that. I used the mohair that I usually use from Newmore Barn. Sorry, I couldn't think what it was called. Newmore Barn Farm. Always get my mohair from there because they have, as I said before, they have photographs of the animals, and you know, they're kept as pets, and they really are, you know, they're not slaughtered or anything like that. You get shorn pieces of hair. I used that hair, I just dyed it myself, sort of like an ombre effect, and then I used a large tube to curl the hair, which gave it just a bit more of a big wavy look. I think it was quite nice. I preferred that. I suppose it doesn't matter, it's just different looks for different things. I was happy with the result of that anyway. I think that's all I can say about her, and I hope you enjoy this, and I'll see you again soon. Bye! Thank you for watching, and thank you to all my patrons on Patreon for supporting me. I really appreciate every one of you. If you would like to see more videos like this, work in progress, my experiences with working with polymer clay over the years, please subscribe, and thank you again for watching this video. See you again soon.